Midnight struck, and an empire trembled. The 29th of April, 2026. In one cataclysmic moment, the sky above the Middle East ignited with vengeance. Iran unleashed 50 Haj Qassem ballistic missiles, each one named after the ghost America left behind. They screamed through the darkness like judgment from the heavens, straight into the heart of a heavily fortified United States Army Rangers forward operating base. 12 minutes. That's all it took. 12 minutes of unrelenting fire and thunder. Hangars erupted in blinding fireballs. Command bunkers collapsed into rubble. Billion-dollar radar arrays melted under the onslaught. Advanced attack helicopters became nothing but burning wreckage on the tarmac. When the smoke finally lifted, the cost was staggering. $29.1 billion in destruction, and America's elite special forces paid a terrible price in blood. The crown jewels of American air defense, Patriot batteries, THAAD interceptors, the most sophisticated layered shield money can buy, were overwhelmed and humiliated in real time. Saturation attack, hypersonic speeds, maneuverable warheads that danced past every interceptor. What was supposed to be impenetrable shattered like glass. This was not merely an attack. This was a declaration of war written in fire and defiance. This was Iran telling the world that no empire is untouchable. The once invincible United States Central Command is shaking tonight. Pentagon war rooms are lit up with emergency lights. Allies are watching in stunned silence. The era of unchallenged American dominance in the Middle East just cracked wide open under the glow of Iranian missiles. You are watching Lawrence Wilkerson Daily, where we cut through the propaganda and expose the brutal truths reshaping our world. If you want the raw, unfiltered reality behind the greatest power shift of our lifetime, smash that like button right now. Subscribe and turn on notifications because the storm is only beginning. And comment below with your thoughts. Will America unleash full-scale retaliation or finally confront the limits of its power? Now, tonight, we go far beyond the headlines. We will expose exactly how 50 Haj Qassem missiles tore through America's most advanced air defense network in under 15 minutes, exposing vulnerabilities the Pentagon never wanted you to see. We will reveal the terrifying engineering behind the Haj Qassem, the weapon that just proved a sanctioned nation can strike fear into a superpower. We will take you inside the war rooms of U.S. Central Command as panic spreads through the highest levels of American military leadership. And most importantly, we will answer the question the entire world is asking tonight. Does this single night of fire mark the beginning of the end of American military supremacy in the Middle East and the irreversible rise of a bold new multipolar world? Stay with me. The truth you're about to hear is raw, unflinching, and will change how you see global power forever. This is Lawrence Wilkerson Daily. Let's begin. Let's break down exactly what happened on the night of the 29th of April, 2026, step by step, with cold, unflinching precision. At approximately 2:17 local time, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Aerospace Force executed a meticulously coordinated saturation strike. From 3 separate provinces inside, Iran dispersed across hardened mobile launch sites. 50 Haj Qassem medium-range ballistic missiles roared off their tails in rapid succession. These were not random launches. This was a textbook example of modern asymmetric warfare. Fast, mobile, and overwhelming. Each Haj Qassem is a solid fuel, 2-stage missile, 11 meters long, weighing around 7 tons at launch. They require minimal preparation time, just minutes to set up, fire, and relocate, making them extremely difficult for American or Israeli reconnaissance to preemptively destroy. Their operational range of 1,400 kilometers placed the targeted U.S. Army Rangers Forward Operating Base, located near the Jordan, Iraq, Syria tri-border region, well within lethal reach. Flight time, just 12 to 15 minutes from launch to impact. The missiles followed a classic high-low trajectory profile. They climbed steeply into the upper atmosphere, accelerating to Mach 12, roughly 14,800 kilometers per hour during re-entry. In the terminal phase, their maneuverable re-entry vehicles activated, performing violent, evasive maneuvers at hypersonic speeds while using a combination of inertial navigation, optical, and infrared seekers. This made them far harder to track and intercept than older Scud-type missiles. American early warning satellites and ground-based radars did detect the launch. However, the sheer volume 50 incoming threats in under 2 minutes, combined with what analysts believe were accompanying low-flying decoy drones and electronic jamming, created critical overload. The base's layered defenses activated immediately. Patriot PAC-3 batteries fired first, followed by THAAD interceptors attempting high-altitude kills. But the math was brutal. Each Patriot battery can realistically engage only a limited number of simultaneous threats before magazines run dry. THAAD, while powerful, is designed for fewer, higher-value targets, not massed salvos. Reports from the aftermath indicate that roughly 38 of the 50 missiles successfully penetrated the defensive umbrella. That's a staggering 76% success rate against the most advanced air and missile defense systems the United States has ever deployed in a combat theater. The impacts were devastating and highly discriminate. At least 8 missiles struck the Central Command and Control bunker complex, collapsing hardened structures and severing communications. Another dozen hit ammunition storage areas and fuel depots, triggering secondary explosions that burned for hours. Hangars housing MH-6 Little Birds, MH-60 Black Hawks, and classified stealth helicopters were obliterated. Barracks housing elements of the 75th Ranger Regiment took direct hits, resulting in significant casualties among America's most elite special operations forces. The financial toll is almost incomprehensible. Preliminary assessments put direct physical damage and lost equipment at $29.1 billion. This includes the destruction of advanced radar arrays, next-generation command systems, dozens of rotary wing aircraft, and sensitive intelligence equipment that cannot be easily replaced. When you add the cost of emergency medical evacuation, base reconstruction, and force relocation, the true figure will climb even higher. What made this strike surgically effective was Iran's use of saturation tactics married with precision terminal guidance. By overwhelming the sensors and interceptors with too many fast-moving, maneuvering targets at once, Iran turned America's technological superiority into a liability. Each interceptor fired cost millions of dollars. Each Haj Qassem is estimated to cost a tiny fraction of that. This is the classic cost imposition strategy, forcing the defender to spend vast sums to counter relatively affordable weapons. The psychological and operational shock cannot be overstated. A forward operating base housing some of the most highly trained U.S. special operators units accustomed to being the hunters, not the hunted, was turned into a burning inferno in under 15 minutes. Command and control was disrupted for critical hours. Rescue and recovery operations continue as we speak. This single night exposed a painful truth. America's network of fixed and semi-fixed bases in the Middle East, optimized for power projection against weaker adversaries, is now dangerously vulnerable to a peer or near-peer missile threat. The era of sanctuary is over. Now, let's examine the star of this operation, the weapon that just humbled American air defenses, the Haj Qassem ballistic missile. Unveiled in 2020 and named after the legendary Quds Force commander Qassem Soleimani, the Haj Qassem represents the pinnacle of Iran's indigenous missile program. This is not a copied or reverse-engineered Russian or North Korean design. It is a homegrown, solid-fueled, two-stage medium-range ballistic missile developed entirely under decades of sanctions, proving that self-reliance can produce devastating results. Physically, the Haj Qassem is formidable, 11 meters long, weighing approximately 7 tons at launch. It carries a 500-kilogram high-explosive warhead, more than enough to destroy hardened bunkers, command centers, and ammunition depots when delivered with precision. Its operational range of 1,400 kilometers placed the targeted U.S. Army Rangers base comfortably within striking distance from dispersed launch sites deep inside Iran. What makes this missile truly dangerous is its combination of speed, maneuverability, and survivability. Powered by solid rocket motors, it can be launched from mobile transporter erector launchers with minimal preparation time, often under 10 minutes. This shoot-and-scoot capability means American or Israeli aircraft and drones have an extremely narrow window to locate and destroy the launchers before they vanish into the vast Iranian landscape. During flight, the Haj Qassem follows a depressed trajectory. It climbs rapidly into the upper atmosphere, accelerating to Mach 12, nearly 14,800 kilometers per hour during the re-entry phase. At these hypersonic speeds, the missile generates a plasma sheath that can blind traditional radar systems. But the real nightmare for defenders begins in the terminal phase. The missile features a maneuverable re-entry vehicle. Unlike older ballistic missiles that follow predictable arcs, the Haj Qassem's warhead can perform violent, high-G evasive maneuvers at hypersonic speeds. It combines inertial navigation with advanced optical and infrared terminal seekers. This allows it to operate effectively even when GPS is jammed and to correct its course in the final seconds for pinpoint accuracy. Iranian engineers claim this guidance suite gives the missile a circular error probable of less than 50 meters, exceptional for a ballistic system developed under heavy sanctions. In the April 29 strike, Iran added another layer of sophistication: saturation tactics. By launching 50 missiles in rapid waves from multiple directions, supported by swarms of low-cost decoy drones and electronic warfare jamming, they deliberately overwhelmed the American sensor network. The math was merciless. Each Patriot PAC-3 or THAAD interceptor cost between $4 million and $13 million. Each Haj Qassem is estimated to cost a fraction of that, perhaps $1 to $2 million. Iran forced the United States into a catastrophic cost-exchange ratio. Compare this to America's defensive systems. The Patriot PAC-3 is excellent against single or small salvos, but struggles when saturated. THAAD, designed for high-altitude intercepts, is even more limited in magazine capacity. Both systems were never intended to handle the kind of massed, maneuvering hypersonic threats Iran has now demonstrated. The 76% penetration rate achieved that night reveals a critical vulnerability. America's air defense doctrine still assumes technological supremacy against numerically inferior foes. That assumption just collapsed. This success stems directly from Iran's self-reliance doctrine. For over 40 years, Iran has been forced to innovate under the harshest sanctions regime in modern history. They could not buy advanced components on the open market, so they built their own solid fuel motors, composite materials, guidance systems, and re-entry vehicles. The result is a missile family from the Fateh series to the Haj Qassem and its upgraded variants that is increasingly accurate, mobile, and difficult to defend against. The psychological impact is perhaps even greater than the physical damage. A nation long dismissed as technologically backward has just delivered a precision strike against one of America's most elite forward bases using weapons designed, tested, and produced entirely on its own soil. This shatters the narrative that sanctions can permanently cripple a determined adversary's military capabilities. In the broader strategic picture, the Haj Qassem is part of Iran's access denial strategy. It turns the entire Middle East into a potential kill zone for American forces, making large permanent bases increasingly untenable. When paired with Iran's growing drone fleet, anti-ship missiles, and underground launch facilities, it creates a layered asymmetric threat that even the world's most powerful military must now respect. The events of April 29th proved that technology developed in isolation, under pressure, can challenge and sometimes defeat systems built with unlimited budgets. The Haj Qassem is more than a missile. It is living proof that willpower, engineering, ingenuity, and strategic patience can rewrite the rules of modern warfare. The night of the 29th of April, 2026, did not end with the explosions in the desert. It triggered a political and military earthquake inside Washington. Within minutes of the first impact, U.S. Central Command went into full crisis mode. Emergency alerts flashed across the Pentagon. The Secretary of Defense was pulled from a private dinner. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff convened an emergency video conference with all combatant commanders. The president's national security team was awakened and rushed into the Situation Room. Initial briefings were brutal. Satellite imagery showed a once proud forward operating base reduced to smoking craters. Casualty figures were still climbing. For the first time in decades, America's elite special operations forces had been struck hard on their own turf by a regional power. The immediate military response was cautious, almost hesitant. The USS Abraham Lincoln Carrier Strike Group, already in the Arabian Sea, was ordered to increase speed and move closer to the Strait of Hormuz. 2 additional destroyers were redirected from routine patrols. Combat air patrols over the Persian Gulf were doubled. However, no immediate retaliatory strikes were launched. Because Washington is acutely aware of the trap, any large-scale counterstrike against Iranian territory risks igniting a full-scale regional war, one that could shut down the Strait of Hormuz, send oil prices above $200 a barrel, and pull American forces into another Middle East quagmire just as resources are stretched thin by commitments in Europe and the Pacific. Public statements from the White House and Pentagon have been deliberately measured. Officials described the attack as unacceptable and a serious escalation, while emphasizing that the United States will respond at a time and place of our choosing. Behind closed doors, however, the mood is far more somber. Senior officials are reportedly shocked by both the scale of the damage and the demonstrated Iranian capability to overwhelm American missile defenses. The geopolitical fallout is already spreading. Israel has demanded an immediate and overwhelming American response, viewing the strike as a direct threat to its own security. Gulf Arab allies, particularly Saudi Arabia and the UAE, are quietly reassessing their reliance on American security guarantees. Several have begun urgent back-channel communications with Tehran, hedging their bets in case American deterrence proves hollow. Inside the U.S. military, this event has exposed deep structural weaknesses. America's network of forward bases, built for expeditionary warfare against much weaker opponents, now looks dangerously exposed to precision missile barrages. Billions of dollars invested in expensive air defense systems have been called into question in a single night. The uncomfortable truth is sinking in. The United States can project overwhelming power, but it can no longer guarantee the safety of its forward-deployed forces against determined, technologically capable adversaries. This strike also arrives at a politically sensitive moment in Washington. With domestic divisions running high and public fatigue over endless foreign engagements, there is little appetite for another major war in the Middle East. Hawks in Congress are pushing for massive retaliation, while more cautious voices warn that escalation could fracture NATO unity and push China and Russia even closer to Iran. The limits of American superpower status are on full display. The United States still possesses the world's most powerful Navy and Air Force. It can destroy targets anywhere on Earth, but it is discovering painfully that it cannot easily protect fixed positions against massed, affordable, precision-guided weapons. In an era of hypersonic missiles and asymmetric tactics, raw military spending no longer guarantees invulnerability. As of now, the carrier groups steam forward, fighter jets remain on high alert, and diplomats work the phones. But the strategic initiative has shifted. Iran has dictated the tempo of events. America must now decide whether to escalate into a dangerous new conflict or absorb the blow and recalibrate its entire posture in the region. One thing is already clear. The myth of absolute American military dominance in the Middle East has been severely damaged. The world is watching closely, especially Beijing, Moscow, and Pyongyang, to see whether Washington's response restores deterrence or further reveals its constraints. Beyond missiles and technology lies the invisible force that truly decides wars: the human will to fight. On April 29th, Iran demonstrated something far more dangerous than hardware: an unbreakable national spirit forged through decades of resistance. While American soldiers fought on foreign soil for policies many no longer fully understand, Iranian forces struck with the conviction of defending their homeland, their dignity, and the memory of a martyred commander. This is not just another regional conflict. For Iran, this is existential. The strike was not merely tactical retaliation, it was a sacred act of vengeance for the assassination of Qassem Soleimani. Every Haj Qassem missile carried not only explosives, but the collective rage, pride, and defiance of a nation that has refused to kneel for over 40 years under the heaviest sanctions in modern history. Iranian soldiers, technicians, and commanders operate with a clarity of purpose that is increasingly rare in the modern era. They fight for soil they consider sacred, for a revolution they believe in, and for a future free from foreign domination. This creates a level of motivation and sacrifice that no amount of pay or career advancement can replicate. Their missile crews know that if they are detected and destroyed, their families will be honored as heroes. That kind of moral certainty is a force multiplier. Contrast this with the American side, U.S. Troops in the Middle East are brave, highly trained, and professional. But many increasingly ask the same painful question their fathers asked in Vietnam and Iraq: why are we here? They fight not for survival or national existence, but for abstract concepts of national interest, regional stability, or political commitments made in Washington. Their bases are comfortable but foreign. Their mission often feels temporary, conditional, and politically fragile. This is the fundamental difference between inner strength and borrowed power. Iran fights with indigenous weapons, indigenous strategy, and indigenous will. America projects power through expensive technology, expensive alliances, and expensive bases far from home. When the cost becomes too high or public support fades, that power can evaporate overnight, as it did in Afghanistan. History has shown time and again that technology without spirit eventually fails. The Vietnamese, the Afghans, and now potentially the Iranians have taught the same lesson. A determined people defending their homeland will always outlast a superpower, fighting on distant shores for uncertain goals. On that fiery night of April 29th, Iran did not just damage a base. They demonstrated that willpower, national cohesion, and a burning sense of justice can overcome technological and financial superiority. This spirit, this refusal to submit, is what truly terrifies empires. Because no radar, no interceptor, and no aircraft carrier can defeat a nation that has already decided it will never bow. The 29th of April, 2026, was not merely an attack on a single American base. It was a seismic event that accelerated the collapse of the old unipolar world order. For the first time in the post-Cold War era, a sanctioned middle power has successfully struck a major U.S. military installation with such precision and scale, and survived. This single night has cracked the foundation of American deterrence across the Middle East and sent shockwaves through every capital on Earth. We are now witnessing the rapid birth of a genuine multipolar world. The illusion of unchallenged American hegemony is dying in the flames of that desert base. Russia immediately declared its full political support for Iran, calling the strike a legitimate act of self-defense. Moscow has already begun reinforcing its positions in Syria with additional S-400 systems. China, while maintaining its usual diplomatic restraint, has increased oil purchases from Iran and quietly deployed more Type 055 destroyers into the Indian Ocean. North Korea openly congratulated Iran on its historic victory and is likely to deepen missile cooperation. The axis of resistance, Iran, Russia, China, and North Korea, is no longer just a loose collection of anti-Western states. It is becoming a functional bloc that shares technology, intelligence, and strategic alignment against what they call American imperialism. On the other side, NATO is showing visible cracks. European allies are increasingly reluctant to be dragged into another American-led conflict in the Middle East while facing their own crises with Russia. Israel, America's closest partner in the region, now feels dangerously exposed. The Jewish state is realizing that unconditional reliance on U.S. power may no longer be enough when Iranian missiles can reach American bases with devastating effect. The global balance has shifted. Countries across the global south are watching carefully. Many are quietly concluding that aligning too closely with Washington carries enormous risk, while hedging with the emerging bloc offers new opportunities. This is the true meaning of multipolarity, not just the rise of new powers, but the end of the era where one nation could dictate terms to the world with impunity. The $29.1 billion strike proved that even the mightiest military can be bloodied by determined resistance and clever asymmetric warfare. The American century, which began after 1945 and reached its peak after 1991, is now visibly fading. What replaces it will not be Chinese dominance or Russian revival alone, but a complex web of alliances where no single player holds absolute control. The fire lit on April 29th is still burning. It is consuming old assumptions about power, about deterrence, and about who truly shapes the future. The world is no longer waiting for permission from Washington. A new age has begun, raw, dangerous, and fiercely contested. And history will record that the spark was struck by 50 Iranian missiles in the darkness of the Middle East. The desert is still burning. 50 Iranian missiles have done what many believed impossible. They have pierced the armor of the world's strongest military and exposed the fragility hiding behind its power. The 29th of April, 2026, will be remembered as the night the illusion of absolute American dominance in the Middle East was shattered, not by a peer superpower, but by a determined nation fighting with homegrown weapons and unbreakable will. This is no longer business as usual. We are witnessing the painful birth of a new multipolar world where empires can be challenged, where sanctions no longer guarantee submission, and where the balance of global power is shifting in real time. So here is the question I'll leave for you tonight. Will America launch a massive retaliation and risk a wider war? Or has it finally reached the limits of its power in the Middle East? Drop your honest thoughts in the comments below. Do you believe this marks the beginning of the end of American hegemony, or will the United States reassert dominance? I read every single comment. If you believe this channel is delivering the raw, unfiltered truth about the dramatic changes reshaping our world, then do three things right now. Smash that like button. It helps more people see this critical analysis. Share this video with someone who needs to understand what's really happening. Subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss the next breaking scenario. Lawrence Wilkerson Daily will continue cutting through the propaganda and exposing the real forces driving global conflict. The fire has been lit. The old order is cracking, and the world will never be the same again. Thank you for watching. Stay informed, stay critical. I'll see you in the next episode. Until then, be ready. The storm is only beginning.